presenting something to someone that we don't know, a stranger, and we're asking them to respond, to receive what we're presenting them. Again, we're not selling, we're not asking for money, it's nothing like that, but there's certain tactics that can be used that could make it easier for them to want to receive Christ. You know, if we're not very tactful, if we're not wise, then we might not have as much success, right? So in these 20 years of me being a daily soul winner, these are just some things I've learned I'll share with you. Number one, the approach. Okay, letter A, don't waste time. Don't waste time. Now, what I mean by that is don't waste time when you go out soul winning. Don't just be aimlessly driving around. Don't just be lollygagging in between houses if you're going door knocking. Don't be distracted by yard sales and start looking at items in a yard sale. Don't waste time when you talk to the person. Don't waste time. When you get someone to answer the door or when you approach someone on the street or at a park or something like that, it's okay to make small talk. You got to do that to get started. But don't waste time by like talking about politics or talking about the war, or talking about, you know, homosexuality or talking about whatever. I mean, just it can get you distracted. So don't waste time. Letter B, pray. Pray. Pray while you're driving to go soul winning. If you have a silent partner, the silent partner just prays the whole time while you're presenting the gospel. You know, pray for the soul to get saved. Pray for there to be no distractions, no interference, no phone ringing, baby crying, dog barking, all that stuff. Just pray for everything to go smoothly. And then, of course, pray for the Holy Spirit to convict them to be saved. Now, if you're going by yourself, you know, it's not easy, but sometimes I pray while I'm sharing the gospel with them. I pray in my mind, Lord, help them to get it. Let there be no distractions. You know, I was out soul winning yesterday. I got to tell you this is the first time that this had happened, I think, maybe the second time. But I went to the bus stop, and I saw the 16-year-old, and he was so open and so receptive. I said, what time's your bus coming? He goes, I don't know. He said, tell me, what number's your bus? And he told me, and I said, well, hopefully it'll come at 2. It was like 1:43 or so, 1:47. So I was like, hopefully it'll come at 2, which would have given me 12, 13, 14 minutes to witness to him. Well, it came at 1:55, you know. So I was sharing the gospel with him, got all the way through, and the bus pulled up. And I said, well, listen, you know, if Jesus was willing to save you, would you be willing to ask him to? And he said, yes. I said, can I pray for you real quick before we go on the bus? And he said, yes. So I gave a short version of the prayer. I didn't, you know, pray all the big preliminary stuff like I normally do, but he prayed the prayer of salvation. I said, quick, let's run and go get on the bus. And the bus started to pull away. And so I knocked on the bus, and then it kept going, and it drove off. I felt like Peter Parker in that Spider-Man movie where he's knocking on the school bus, and they're all laughing at him as the bus driver pulls off, you know. But at any rate, so I thought, oh, my soul, I felt so bad. And so I looked at him, I said, man, I am so sorry. He goes, no, it's okay. And he was really happy to be saved. I mean, he was really happy. I said, let me take you where you need to go. And he said, fine. And so he had a little scooter thing, and he put it in the back of my truck, and I took him to where he needed to go. But he was so happy to be saved, and he prayed and got saved, and he did not even care that he missed his bus. And so now I got him quicker. I told you, I said, you know, I'm probably going to get you quicker where you want to go than if you went all those different stops before you got where you were going. And so it actually worked out pretty good for him. But the fact of the matter is, I was praying while I was witnessing to him. Lord, help the bus not come. Help the bus not come. Help the bus not come. And while I was witnessing to him, and of course the bus did come. So, but at any rate, but pray. Letter C, the silent partner should stand on the hinge side of the door. Okay, so here's what this means. If you're knocking on a door and there's a screen door or even the front door, doesn't really matter. Well, there's the door where it opens and then there's the hinge. So if you're going to be the talker, don't stand where the hinge is. So then they open the door and you have to like, hello, how are you? No, have the silent partner stand over there and position yourself so that you're the one that's directly line of sight with the person that is opening the door. And that's just a small thing, but it does make a difference. One of the things about meeting a stranger, someone that you've never met before, and you're hoping to have an engaging conversation with them, you don't want anything to be awkward. If things get awkward, it'll just be super easy for them to end the conversation, right? So this is just a little thing just to make the opportunity to go smoother. Letter D, knock loud enough to be heard. or use the doorbell. Now, when I do it, I use the doorbell, and if I'm not sure if it rang, then I knock too. So a lot of times I hit the doorbell, and then I knock. I remember one time I was out soul winning with my mom, and I knocked on the door, something like that. And she went, "Well, do you think they're going to hear that pathetic knock, son?" And then she went like that, So I'm the pastor. What are you doing? I'm not your son. I'm the pastor right now. When I'm home, I'm your son. But anyway, knock loud enough to be heard. So in other words, don't be timid when you knock. And then, of course, you got to be careful. You don't want to knock like that either, right? So there's a little bit of a balance. So that's how Brother David knocks. Brother David, he knocks like that, and everyone, whoa, what's going on? And then he after he scares them, he wins them to Christ. But anyway, knock loud enough to be heard or use the doorbell. Letter E, do not talk while standing at the door waiting for it to open. Now listen to me carefully about this. Don't talk to each other at the door after you ring the doorbell. Knock. Don't, because those ringtone cameras, they have audio, and they're hearing everything that you're saying. And sometimes you'll say something that, oh boy, that last person was a grouch, and oh my soul, I never heard that person cuss at me. Well, I hope I never see that person again. Whatever, you're just saying whatever, right? And then they're listening to you. And a lot of times, not that you're saying something wrong, but it could just simply be taken the wrong way. And just don't talk to each other. I mean, I'm telling you, they can hear you. They hear what you're saying. And sometimes when I walk away after we, knock on a door or meet someone in public, then you have the maybe the feeling to talk to each other. Don't. They can hear you talking while you're walking away from them too. And if you're like saying something negative about what they did or said or whatever, or boy, that was a grouch, or something like that, that ain't going to go over well. So just don't talk when you're standing at the door. And then letter F, stand back from the door. I remember when I was in Bible college, there was this one college student who knocked on the door, and here's the door. He just stood right there waiting for the door to open. And it's like when you open the door, they're like, whoa, hey, man, what in the world? You're just right there in the face, So what you do when you knock on the door, take a step back and let there be a foot or two maybe in between you and the door, so you're not just right up in their face when they answer the door. And even one preacher told me at one time, he said, for soul winning, when they answer the door, don't just try to make eye contact with them right away. Just kind of let them make eye contact with you first. So like if the door's opening up, just look at the doorknob as it's opening, and then lift up your head, and that way you're not intimidating, and it's not like right in their face. So these are just short things, small things, but they do make a difference, and it's just using wisdom when you go out soul winning. Number 2, the introduction. Letter A, relax. Just relax. Folks, they don't have anything up on you. You've got the upper advantage on them. You know where you're going. You're saved. They're not. You're not looking at someone like, you got to be nervous about them. Don't. Just relax. You got to tell yourself, just relax. I know that one preacher years ago told me when he talked about wealthy people, when he had witnessed and talked to wealthy people, he said, I never get nervous when I talk to a wealthy person. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. And they're human beings, just like I am. So the devil wants you to be nervous. He wants to get in your head and make you feel like you're inadequate. You don't know what you're doing. They're not going to receive you. They're going to get mad at you for knocking on your door. I was out soul winning, I think, with Brother Ross last week, and there was a no soliciting sign on the door. And so I knocked on the door, and the guy came to the door after a little bit of time. He opened the door. I said, hey, sir, how you doing today? He goes, not good at all. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I'm pastor. He goes, can't you read the sign? And I said, no soliciting. Yeah, I can read it. Not soliciting, have a good day, and just turned around and walked away. So, I mean, just what could you do, right? But the fact of the matter is, not everybody's going to treat you that way. I mean, and by the way, I'm 56 years of age. I don't care if someone gets mad at me. I've had so many people in my past get mad at me when I knock on their door. It's just one more, they won't be the last, and they aren't the first that got mad at me. So I try not to make people mad, but sometimes the people, they just get mad at you. There's a verse in the Bible where in the book of Psalms it says, I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. So what the psalmist is saying is, I'm just trying to be peaceful and help people, like, whatever, go to heaven. I mean, whatever. And so I speak to them, but then they get all mad and angry, and they're all bent out of shape over whatever. But look, it'll happen from time to time. It won't happen all the time. Just relax. Just relax. Then letter B, introduce yourself and your partner. So when I go soul winning, I say, hey, I'm Pastor Sulian. This is Brother Ross. And we're just out in the neighborhood meeting folks, letting them know about our church and wanting to pray for people. And here's our brochure. You know, introduce yourself. That's how you start a conversation, especially with someone that you don't know. Letter C, do not speed talk. A lot of times when people get nervous, they talk really fast and they just sit there and say, hi, my name is Pastor. I'd like to talk to you about and they get nervous and they talk fast. Just slow down. Just slow down. Don't speed talk. Relax. Talk calmly. Allow yourself to breathe in between sentences, and allow them opportunity to digest what you're saying. Now, obviously, just like you don't want to pound on the door, you don't want to talk too slow, okay? So, obviously have balance, but your problem probably will not be talking too slow. If anything, it'll be your speed talking, and you don't want to do that. Next, letter D, give them a gospel tract or a flyer. So after you introduce yourself, say, hi, I'm Pastor Sulian. This is Brother Ross. We're from Hopewell. We're just out meeting people, letting them know about our church and wanting to know if we can pray for you. Here, this is our brochure. And then once you offer the tract, you have a pretty good indication as to whether or not they're going to be receptive, how they receive the tract. If they say, no, thank you, not interested. I was out solding a few weeks ago, I think with Brother Bill, and I was out by the park, and there was these two men walking, and I went to offer one of them a gospel tract, and he goes, that's a big no, and he kept on walking, and I went, oh, that's a big no. Okay, wonderful, big no. and he just kept on walking. Sometimes I get a little snarky, but I don't ever be unkind. I don't ever get mean to anybody, but sometimes when they say things like that, it's kind of humorous. Oh, that's a big no. I'm like, okay, it's a big no, not just a no, a big no. But anyway, but when you offer the gospel tract, then you'll get a good indication by their body language and how they look at you, whether or not they're going to be someone that's going to be interested in talking. A lot of times they're not. So if you can at least get a gospel tract into their hand, then they actually have the gospel. Now, whether they read it or not, it's all on them. But at least if you can get it to them. Brother David told me one time he was going soul winning with a teenager and was walking down the sidewalk, and this man was coming down, pushing his garbage can to the curb. And he went up to him and said, hey, sir, I'd like to give you this tract. I'm Brother David, assistant pastor at Hopewell. And he just took the tract and threw it in the trash can and just did it right in front of him. And then he beat him up for doing it. Man, Brother David was mad. He beat him up. But anyway, once you put a gospel tract in their hand, it's on them, whatever they do with it. But at least if you give them the gospel tract, they're without excuse. They had the gospel in their hand. Okay, next, letter E. State your purpose while you're knocking on their door. So I kind of already said that. I'm Pastor Sulian. This is Brother Ross. We're from Hopewell, and we're out meeting folks, letting them know about our church and offering to pray for people. So that's stating your purpose. Why are you knocking on their door? And sometimes, on a rare occasion, I'll knock on the door, and they're like, can I help you? Like that. They answer the door like that, like, what are you doing knocking on my door? Most of the time people don't do that. But if you state the purpose for why you're knocking, that goes over great. Now, number 3, the questions to ask. I got 7 of them here that are, you can pick one or a couple of them. You don't have to use them all, of course. Letter A, do you and your family have a church that you attend? Asking a question will give them an opportunity to respond. Once they respond, again, you'll know whether or not you can go any further. But if they're open to a dialogue, once they respond with this question, it gives you a basis for maybe what their teaching and doctrine was in the past. When I ask someone, I'm Pastor Sulian, Brother Ross, we're out meeting folks from Hopewell, letting them know about our church, asking them if we can pray for them. After I say, is there anything I can pray for you? Sometimes I'll say, do y'all go to church anywhere? And if they say, yes, we're Catholic, or yes, we're Mormon, or yes, we go to this such and such church, it gives me an understanding of what they have been exposed to. And of course, the majority of churches in this world don't teach the right gospel. But it allows me to know what angle I could approach when it comes to presenting the gospel. And so, do you and your family have a church that you attend? Letter B. When you die, do you know for sure that you'll go to heaven, or do you hope to go to heaven? That's an opportunity or question that you can ask them. And then again, listening to their response. Letter C. What are you basing your faith on to go to heaven? If this lady said to me yesterday at the park before I led that at the bus stop before I led that teenager to the Lord, she goes, "Oh, I know I'm going to heaven." That's what she said to me. And I said, "Really?" I said, "Wonderful. How do you know you're going to heaven?" And she goes, "Back in Rio Rancho, I went to a Baptist church and I got saved." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that sounds pretty good." I still did a little bit of digging and just to make sure it was the right, I could have been a Southern Baptist church, not an independent Baptist church. Who knows what it was, but she didn't remember the name of it or the preacher because I thought maybe it could have been one of my friends. I got a friend that pastors down there. But at any rate, when I presented the gospel, she goes, "Yep, I did that. I asked Jesus to," she said, "I asked Jesus to save me from the devil," and so, but the point is, she, I questioned her like 3 or 4 times, and she goes, "Nope, no, I know for sure." So then I just prayed for her need that she wanted me to pray for her about. But what are you basing your faith on can help you to understand whether or not they're really saved or not. Don't just take it for granted. If they say, "I know I'm going to heaven," that they are. Ask them why, and sometimes they have an experience in life where God, I asked someone, "Have you ever been saved before?" "Oh yeah, I got saved from this car accident, God saved my life, so then I immediately know in my mind they're not saved, but they had an experience with God. So then I say, it's great that you had your life saved, but in order to go to heaven, you have to have your soul saved. Has anybody ever showed you how your soul can be saved, right? And a lot of times that'll help. Next, letter D. Has anyone ever showed you from the Bible how you can know for sure that you're going to heaven? Before I ask that question, I always give my testimony about 1980. A pastor asked if I knew for sure when I died I'd go to heaven, and I said, "I hope so." And he said, "Well, the Bible says there's a way that you can know so. Would you like to know for sure that you're going?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he showed me the verses in the Bible where it explains how a person can know for sure they'll go to heaven. And it was, the greatest day of my life. I never forgot it. What a wonderful feeling it was. June 15, 1980. Sir, has anybody ever showed you those verses before? And that's how I lead into that question. And most of the time they say no. In fact, that teenage boy yesterday, he goes, "No." And I was like, "Well, would you like to see them? I'd like to share them with you." He said, "Yeah." And so I got to share it with him. Next, do you remember getting saved? Again, that's another question that you can ask. Letter F is, if Jesus were to ask you why he should let you into heaven, what would you say? And again, this is for someone that already thinks they are going to heaven. This is just a way for you to kind of do a little bit of digging. Like what's the reason you're going to go? Like what would you say? And then letter G, before we leave, I have a small New Testament with me. May I show you how you can know that you'll go to heaven? So asking questions similar to these is a way to get the person you're talking to be engaged with you, because they're going to respond. Obviously, give them an opportunity to respond, listen to them carefully, but then from their response, you ought to be able to decide whether or not you can go forward with the conversation. And again, how to go forward. Because, if you talk to someone who's raised Catholic, it might be different than, presenting the gospel to them than you would someone who's never been to church ever in his life. If someone has never been to church ever in his life, then I'm probably, when I get to the sin point, I'm going to talk about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, an original sin. And I'll explain, they're the first 2 human beings. We all come from Adam and Eve. We're all part of the same human race, and we're all born with a sin nature. And it all started with Adam and Eve, And so, like with someone that's not knowledgeable about the Bible, that's how I'll approach that. But someone who's raised in church all their life, well, then I don't necessarily have to go back to Adam and Eve because they've probably heard it. But at any rate, before we leave, and these are questions, and how they respond, it'll give you a good indication as to what to do, and also if they're going to be interested in listening. Any questions?